Hello, my dear students. Welcome to my channel Excel in English. Today we are going to explore the poem 9 Gold Medals by David Roth from your Class 9 CBSE syllabus. But before we begin the line-by-line explanation, let's first understand the background of this poem. This poem is written by David Roth, a famous contemporary American singer, songwriter, and poet who is known for creating songs that touch human hearts. The central theme of this poem is both simple and powerful. 9 courageous athletes participating in a single event at the Special Olympics who end up sharing a gold medal not by beating each other but by holding hands and walking together. Now, what exactly is this Special Olympics? The Special Olympics is the world's largest sports organization for children and adults with intellectual disabilities. It provides year-round training and competitions and give athletes an opportunity to build confidence, develop their abilities, and also experience the joy of participating in sports. What makes this poem even more special is that it is inspired by a real life incident from the Special Olympics. In reality, during the 1976 Special Olympics race, a young runner stumbled and fell. One or two athletes stopped to help him, while others continued the race. Now, our poet David Roth transformed this real life incident into a more inspiring story by imagining all the other athletes helping the fallen person and crossing the finish line together to highlight the values of kindness, compassion, and true sportsmanship. Now, let's start the text of the poem. First stanza. The athletes had come from all over the country. In the first line, the poet tells us that athletes, which means players or sports participants. So the athletes had traveled from various cities and towns to participate in an important sporting event, the Special Olympics. So this line tells us how big and how important this sports event is. Now, why had they come? To run for the gold, for the silver and bronze. They had come to run and win medals. Here gold, silver and bronze stand for the top 3 prizes, the first, the second and the third prize respectively. Every runner has a dream to win a medal for the hard work, isn't it? Many weeks and months of training. Training means regular practice to improve one's skills. The athletes did not just come directly to the race. They spent many weeks and months practicing every single day, all coming down to these games. This phrase coming down to means leading up to or depending on one final event. So this line means that all their past hard work, practice and dreams now depend on this one event. Everything they worked for will be decided right here on how they performed in these games. In the second stanza, the poet introduces the crowd. The spectators gathered around the old field. Many spectators or people who had come to watch the competition gathered around the old sports field. Why did the crowd gather? To cheer on all the young women and men. To cheer on, which means to shout with joy and encourage the participants. So they were there to motivate all the young athletes competing in the event. The final event of the day was approaching. This line tells us about the timing. The last and the most awaited race of the day was approaching, which means coming closer or about to start. Excitement was high to begin because it was the final event. Everyone in the stadium was super excited. Both the runners and the spectators were eagerly waiting for the race to start. Here the poet says that excitement was high to emphasize the intense enthusiasm of the people present there. So in this stanza, we get a glimpse of the energetic atmosphere in the stadium just before the big race starts. Now let's move on to the third stanza. The blocks were all lined up for those who would use them. In this line, the poet talks about the starting blocks. These are wooden or plastic blocks fixed to the track. These blocks actually help the runners push off quickly and gain speed at the very beginning of the race. So this creates a visual imagery because the poet paints a clear picture of how the athletes were standing at the starting area. The 100-yard dash and the race to be run. A dash, is a short, high-speed sprint race. This event was the 100-yard dash. 100-yard is roughly equal to 91 meters. Okay. These were 9 resolved athletes in the back of the starting line. Here the poet introduces the 9 athletes who were standing behind the starting line. They were resolved, which means they had a strong determination to do their best. They looked calm, confident, and fully prepared for the race. Poised for the sound of the gun. This line captures the intense anticipation. Poised means ready, balanced, and completely prepared to act or move. The athletes were standing perfectly still, waiting for the starter's gun to signal the beginning of the race. Here, the sound of the gun refers to the start signal of the pistol, which is fired into the air to signal the start of a race. Now, this is an example of auditory imagery because the poet appeals to our sense of hearing and helps us to imagine the sound. So these athletes were alert, focused, and ready to sprint the moment they heard the sound. Now we arrive at the turning point of the poem in stanza 4. The signal was given, the pistol exploded. So the race officially began. The starter gave the signal by firing a starting pistol into the air. The word exploded describes the sudden loud bang of the starter's gunshot that indicates that the race has started. This creates again an auditory imagery as the poet appeals to our sense of hearing. And so did the runners all charging ahead. Charging ahead means rushing forward with great speed and energy. That means as soon as they heard the sound of the pistol, all the runners rushed forward with great speed and determination. They were eager to give their best and win the race. Here we find an example of visual imagery. But the smallest among them, he stumbled and staggered. Suddenly something unfortunate happened. The smallest athlete lost his balance. He stumbled, means he lost his balance and tripped while running, and then he staggered, that is, walked unsteadily because he could not regain his balance. Notice that the word smallest, stumbled, and staggered, these all words begin with the same S sound. So this is an example of alliteration where the nearby words start with the same consonant sound and fell to the asphalt instead. So unable to recover the balance, the young athlete fell into the asphalt, which is the hard black material used to pave the running track or road. So the dreams of the smallest athlete of winning the race seemed to end in that painful moment. And once again, we find visual imagery as we can clearly imagine the young athlete lying on the track helplessly. The fifth stanza. He gave out a cry of frustration and anguish. After falling on the track, The smallest athlete cried out loudly. He felt frustrated because he could no longer continue the race as he had hoped. He also felt anguish, which means deep emotional pain and sadness. The poet shows us how heartbreaking this moment was for this young runner. His dreams and his efforts dashed in the dirt. Dashed in the dirt means completely ruined or shattered. So the athlete felt that with his falling down in the ground, all his months of hard practice and his dream of winning a gold medal were completely broken and thrown into the dust right in front of his eyes. Here again we find alliteration in the repetition of the D sound at the beginning of these words dreams, dashed, and dirt. Next, but as sure as I'm standing here telling this story, the same goes for what next occurred. Here the poet directly addresses us, the readers. Occurred means happened or took place. So David Roth promises us that just as certain as surely as he is telling this story, what happened next on that day on the track is an absolute undeniable truth. He creates suspense and prepares us for an unexpected event. Now, the sixth stanza where the poem reaches its most touching moment. The 8 other runners pulled up on their heels. The phrase pulled up on their heels means they stopped suddenly while running. Here the poet tells us that the other 8 athletes suddenly stopped running. They could have continued the race, but they immediately slowed down and stopped. The ones who had trained for so long to compete. Here the poet reminds us how big a sacrifice this was. These runners had spent many weeks and months practicing hard for this important race because they wanted to compete and win medals. Yet, at this moment, they chose kindness over competition. And how? One by one, they all turned round and went back to help him. Look at the unity in this line. Not just one, but every single runner turned around, one by one. It shows a continuous, deliberate action. They all gave up their individual chance of winning first place and ran backward to assist their fallen friend and brought the young boy to his feet. The runners helped the fallen boy stand up again. The expression brought him to his feet means helped him to get up after falling. This simple act of kindness changes the entire meaning of the race. In this stanza, we get visual imagery as the expressions pulled up on their heels, turned round and back to help him, and then brought the young boy to his feet. All these expressions create a clear moving picture of the athletes stopping, turning back, and helping a friend. The seventh stanza, where the poem reaches its most beautiful and inspiring moment. Then all the 9 runners joined hands and continued. Joined hands means they held each other's hands. So after helping the fallen boy to stand up, all the 9 athletes held each other's hands. Now instead of competing individually, all the 9 athletes decided to continue the race together as friends, as a united group. The 100-yard dash now reduced to a walk. Reduced to a walk means the speed changed from a fast sprint to a slow, steady walking pace so that the boy who fell down could easily keep up with them. The athletes no longer cared about speed or victory. Their only goal now was to stay together. And a banner above that said Special Olympics. A banner is a large piece of cloth or sign with words or pictures displayed in a public place. So, as they walked together, there was a banner hanging above the track with the words Special Olympics. Could not have been more on the mark. The idiom on the mark means exactly right, appropriate, or perfectly suitable. Now, let's understand this line properly. On the surface level, the word special, it simply refers to the Special Olympics, where athletes with intellectual disabilities take part in sports. But this very word special takes on a much deeper, beautiful meaning here, because what happened on that track was not just an ordinary competition. When the 8 athletes set aside their desire for personal glory to help a fallen friend, their empathy and kindness made the event truly special. That's why the poet says that the banner reading Special Olympics was on the mark or perfectly accurate, because what these 9 athletes did was truly special, as they showed compassion over competition. Now we have reached the final stanza. That's how the race ended, with 9 gold medals. A beautiful ending of the race. Instead of only one winner receiving a gold medal, the poet says that all the 9 athletes received gold medals. Everyone was declared a winner. Here, the 9 gold medals is also symbolic. It represents that every athlete became a true winner because they chose humanity over personal success. They came to the finish line holding hands still. The finish line refers to the line that marks the end of a race. Now notice the word still here. From the moment they helped the fallen athlete stand up, they never let him go. Holding hands continuously, all 9 athletes crossed the finish line side by side as a single united group. And a standing ovation and 9 beaming faces. This line captures the joyful reaction of the spectators and the runners. The spectators were so deeply moved that they gave a standing ovation. That is, they stood up and clapped loudly to honor the athletes. The phrase 9 beaming faces means that all the runners were smiling brightly with happiness and pride. And the smiles came not because they had won a race, but because they had shown kindness, unity, and compassion. It was a reflection of that inner happiness. Here we find visual imagery as the phrase holding hands, standing ovation, and 9 beaming faces. All these create a vivid picture of the joyful and emotional ending of the race. Said more than these words ever will. The applause of the spectators and the smiles of the athletes expressed a very powerful message of love and empathy that words alone could never fully capture. So in this grand final line, the poet expresses that human emotions and noble actions are far more powerful than spoken or written language. And that brings us to the end of this wonderful poem, 9 Gold Medals by David Roth. If there is one key lesson to take away today, it's that true victory is not about standing alone at the top. It's about lifting others up along the way. These 9 extraordinary athletes showed us that when empathy guides our actions, everyone emerges a winner. Thank you for watching. Keep learning and remember to carry the spirit of kindness wherever you go.